Ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct pleasure of running this show tonight, and this is the 33rd time that the Winchester Chamber of Commerce has selected an outstanding citizen. And right off the bat, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce this year's recipient, Helen Babcock. Stand up again. Take your seat, Mr. Sekaris. This is a one-man show here. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to also introduce Helen's family who is here. It's my pleasure to introduce her partner, Tom. They said I couldn't say this. Butter Cavoli. Tom? And her two children, Amy Poptak and her husband, Ernie. Her son, Stephen Poptak. Stephen's wife could not make it this evening. And next, Tom's son, Stephen Buttercavoli. Stand up, please. Don't be shy. And then we have two sisters, Mary and Jean Babcock. And finally, two nephews. We have Tom and his wife, Jen. Does that mean it's not your wife? Oh. And second, Kevin. Who's Kevin, the nephew, and Erin. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just a description of what we're going to do this evening. They're going to begin serving momentarily the dinner. And we are going to have speakers during the dinner session. So feel free to talk until we have a speaker introduced. And that way we'll move through the program quickly. And so tonight we have a very interesting first speaker. Town meeting will be in order. Ladies and gentlemen, the first speaker this evening, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, John Butler, no talking. That'll be a miracle. The first speaker tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is Dick Carlson. Now, Dick has known Helen since the beginning of her realty career. He founded a company called Carlson Real Estate, which many of you folks know. And in 1987, with Helen in charge, he opened a Winchester office called Carlson of Winchester. The Winchester branch grew from 2 realtors to 45 real estate agents and became the top producing Carlson office. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dick Carlson, a leader in Massachusetts real estate and a very good friend of Helen Babcock.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to help celebrate Helen's special occasion. Helen and I have known each other for 27 years. I first met Helen in 1985 when she set up an appointment and came to my office in Salem. She informed me that she was the #1 Century 21 broker in Winchester. She'd been thinking of opening her own office and decided against it. She thought that I should open an office in Winchester, and having never been there, I finally agreed with her after my first visit with her. Helen began recruiting and built up her new office to 10+ agents. One day she invited me to lunch. She was unhappy. She had done a great job recruiting agents. However, she wasn't creating the impact in the marketplace because she'd not recruited any experienced agents from Winchester. Helen decided that she needed to replace some of those agents with experienced agents. She wanted to buy it. And having quickly learned about her, I said, do what you feel you have. Helen began focusing her efforts primarily on Ann Black and Century 21 agents. The die had been cast, and I knew those companies were in trouble. I learned many things about Helen early on. She was bright, energetic, a hard worker, determined and committed to success, competitive, and opinionated, but I'll discuss that a little bit later. She began an all-out recruiting effort. I would get calls all the time about, can I come and meet with an experienced agent? I remember having to come from Marblehead in foot-deep snow to interview 2 brokers in one of the brokers' kitchens. I think they were so impressed that we came out in the storm, they joined Helen's office almost immediately. Our single greatest triumph, however, occurred right here, when we recruited 8 experienced Ann Blackham agents, a number of which are in this room tonight. Her office quickly became the #1 company in Winchester, as I was confident it would. However, she was not content with just running her office. She also had strong opinions about how the company was being run and was quick to share them. She was extremely helpful, but we didn't always agree, which didn't always please her. Normally, when she called me, Helen had to hear this. Normally, when she called me, she would say, Dick, this is Helen. However, if she was upset, she would call and say, Richard, this is Helen Babcock. So I was always prepared, depending on the salutation. One area we never agreed upon was the tone of our education program. So she sent her people to the company program and then set up her own continuing education in her office. Helen became a great sounding board and over the years provided a lot of good counsel. We had a lot of great years together, but they were not always in the best of times. The company during her tenure went through a number of ownership changes, which were trying and confusing to the company, employees, agents, as well as the public at large. I remember one day standing on a corner in Boston with Helen, and she looks at me and says, this loyalty sucks, and made the gesture of gagging. A few years later, we were joking about the incident, and she said, you know, I was probably the most loyal of all, and I said, I knew that. After being owned by Merrill Lynch and Prudential, we eventually became Carlson once again. And I was commenting to her one day how pleased I was, and she said, but I like Merrill Lynch. And you know what? I should have expected that. I retired 12 years ago. I don't miss the business, but I do miss Helen and the others that I worked with in the organization. In addition to working together, we developed a great friendship that has lasted over the years. Helen was always high energy and an overachiever, and I was pleased and not surprised when I received the invitation for this event. I'm glad to see that you still haven't changed, Helen. You are still the Helen I fondly remember, and I congratulate you on your most recent achievement. Unfortunately, I have another commitment and have to leave now. I would have liked to hear what others had to say about working with you, but I don't believe I would have learned anything new. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. He told me he was going to sneak out. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you may know that Helen Babcock was the president of the Winchester Rotary. And so tonight we have Sidel Patas, who's going to say a few words on behalf of the Winchester Rotary. Sidel?
Well, Helen stood up a minute ago and you saw that she was in an innocent white suit. All beautifully made up, looking so delicate and feminine. We in Rotary, or who have been there for quite a while, have seen a slightly different side of Helen. Long time ago, in the bad old days of the last century, the Rotary Club was an all-male bastion. I think it was known as the Row Club, something like that. Rich old men eating out. Romeo, that's it. Rich old men eating out. And then a lawsuit changed that, and women were allowed to come into Rotary, and the consummate businesswoman probably thought it might be a nice way of making more contacts and contributing to the community. And Helen became one of her members of the Rotary Club of Winchester. Some of the men got up and walked out when the women walked in. A lesser woman might have been daunted, but Helen wasn't. She just dug in, became a super Rotarian, eventually became president of our club, did many, many things to benefit the community. I'll just glance off one of them. You know, the town center has a Rotary. And Helen thought, well, the Rotary Club should do something about this bedraggled piece of earth that was called the Rotary. And so she got the club together and resources together, etc., and had it professionally landscaped. And eventually, the Christmas decorations and so on, they go on every year. She fought off the vandals that used to try to steal or did steal in a reindeer's nose from time to time. Helen Babcock that was our Rotary Club's Rotary, and she defended it. And I came into Rotary, I was pleased and privileged to attend a board meeting that Helen presided over, because I guess I was going to go on to the board, and she thought it was a good idea for us to do that. And I was so impressed with the way she leads. I mean, she leads with kindness and firmness and a gentleness. You talk about an iron fist and a velvet glove. That's Helen Babcock. She was my role model. Thank you very much, Helen, for leading me to go on to more service above self in Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sidel. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a broker for 25 years who knows the honored guest very well, Jerry DeGeorge.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Hi, Helen. Congratulations. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to celebrate your becoming Citizen of the Year in Winchester. I've been asked to speak some on what it was like to work with Helen. I'll begin by telling you who the Helen Babcock I worked with is. Helen is a natural-born leader with a big picture mind who is about getting the job done in a professional manner. She was firm about good practice and maintaining the highest ethical standards. She was fair in the treatment of buyers and sellers, fair to her staff, and fair in mediation when the need arose. And she was about fun. Helen wanted to make a very demanding and intense profession fun and upbeat, to create an environment where people could work as independent contractors and still feel part of the team. And finally, the reason we're all here tonight, Helen was passionate about Winchester, its housing, its center, its businesses, its institutions. Her work was to make each part of our town the very best it could be. Her real estate dealings were often commercial, with the intent of bringing something valuable to the center and increasing its vitality. Actually, my first real estate experience with Helen was when we were brokers in different offices. We were selling our home on Rangeley Ridge, and for various reasons, it took longer to sell than I anticipated. Helen, thankfully, brought us a buyer, much to our relief. A few years later, I joined Helen and went to work with her at Carlson Real Estate. One thing I remember about those first days was voicemail. I told you, Helen is a big picture person. She understood marketing and the value of emerging technologies. Helen's office was the first in town to use the system, but it was new and strange to me. A big deal was made about selecting your personal access code. It couldn't be your birth year or your phone number or something obvious. It had to be secret and unassailable. Now, I said Helen was a marketer, but I didn't say she was a techie. When I covered for her the first time and had to check her voicemail, I was shocked to find out that she had disregarded the whole verbiage about developing your voicemail code, and unbeknownst to me then, she had preempted Herman Cain. Her code was 9999, a definite no-no code. So Helen, if that's your bank PIN number, I've blown your cover, you better change it right after dinner. I mentioned that Helen was about getting the job done in a professional manner. One of the things she wanted was for the brokers to always look professional in the office. Our office was on Main Street, right in the center, with huge, wonderful picture windows where we could see out and anyone walking by could see in. Oftentimes, people, myself included, would pop into the office just for a second to send a quick fax or look something up in a file in less than professional attire. One day when the office was full of people, Helen dashed in wearing a baseball hat, high-top sneakers, and some, I hope I don't see anyone I know, outfit. She announced that she was just staying for a minute. Helen led with humor and example, and the bar was raised. As Dick told you, under Helen's leadership, the Winchester Carlson office grew to be over 40 brokers, and for many successive years was the highest producing office in Winchester. With so many competing, diverse personalities, Helen had to create a team and make the experience fun. One way she did that was by encouraging everyone to participate in social and educational events outside the office. We had a traditional of wonderful house parties to celebrate the winter holidays, and lots of opportunities for trainings, conventions, and workshops. Always looking to educate, Helen arranged for us to go on an all-day seminar with Anthony Robbins, the real estate motivation guru. The only problem was, the day of the presentation was in the dead of winter, it had snowed all night, and no one was willing to drive up to Lowell for the event. Not a problem for Helen. She found out the train schedule, we all took the train to Lowell, the venue. Imagine 1,000 sales associates dancing in the aisles of the Songus Arena to the tune of "I've Heard It on the Grapevine," while trying to catch little snack boxes of raisins being thrown from the stage. This was the finale of Tony Robbins relaying the story of how the sales rocketed when the California raisin growers used that song in their marketing campaign. The whole day beat shoveling snow. For several years, the Winchester office was the office of the year in the Carlson Group. This was a coveted award and meant a lot to Helen and the brokers, so it was celebrated in style. One of our brokers lived in Harbor Towers, the high-rise waterfront residential community. I vividly remember us all climbing on the bus in front of the office, reading silly poems about our achievements, and seeing the sun set over the city. We were cohesive and proud, and it was a wonderful day. We'll hear a lot this evening about Helen's work in and out of the office. In closing, I'd like to sum up how this appears to me. Whenever the business was slow, morale dropped, and things needed perking up. Whenever the business was active, the office became frenzied, tensions rose, and things needed to be calm. Whatever the situation demanded, Helen would respond appropriately. But shortly thereafter, she would put on her coat, grab her handbag, and tell everyone she was going out to run errands, stop at the town hall, go to the bank, whatever. This was when Helen went to her other office, Winchester Center. Just walking up and down Main Street, meeting people, going to shops, stopping at other businesses. Sometimes she just walked home for lunch and then returned. But inevitably, when she did this, she returned to the office refreshed and rejuvenated. She returned with the latest news. She returned with an idea for improvement somewhere in town. And she returned with a listing for sales prospect. Winchester Center was the place where her creative juices flow, and she was most rooted to this town in her business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. It's funny, you learn a little something when you do this. And I learned one thing about Jerry DeGeorge today, that she sold Roger Gurman his first house. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, they're just getting ready to serve the meals, but let me introduce the Winchester Board of Selectmen. This is particularly here tonight because they know that Helen is a very active person in Winchester government. She was, in particular, at the town meeting, she served 10 years as a town meeting member and recently was on the search committee for the new town manager. So at this time, let me introduce the Vice Chairman, Tom Howley. Doris Fontana. Doug Marmon. Jennifer Wilson. And our new town manager at the table, Richard Howard. And Assistant Town Manager, Mark Nogood. I'm sorry, Toogood. And finally, the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy?
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Winchester. A very special occasion tonight. We're here to read a proclamation citation that we've written for the Winchester Board of Selectmen. hereby offers its most sincere congratulations to Helen Babcock in recognition of her many years of service to the community and as a selection of the Citizen of the Year for 2012. The entire board extends its very best wishes and expresses hope, fortune, and continued success in the future. Signed by all of us, we want to thank and acknowledge Helen for all the work she's done for the community. And this is what makes Winchester people who are willing to take not just a few minutes, but a few years to step up and volunteer, be active in our community, and really make a positive impression. On behalf of the board, Helen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Paul Mahoney, for those that don't know him, owns the farm on Cambridge Street, Mahoney's Farm. And he was, I told him tonight, he was my first employer. When we were 14, he would hire us to go and pick corn. And I figured out that he still owes me $26. Next is a speaker to follow us, but she was elected in 1992, Judy Muja. And in 1994 was Sandy Thompson. In 1995, Justin McGee. In 1996, Ann McGovern. Right there. In 1999, recently released from prison, Charles Sekaras. 2001, Corey Nichols. 2003, Kevin Maughan. 2004, the lady in the black dress, Dot Butler. Thank you, Dot. Stephen Parker is 2005. 2006, Alan Iden. 2007, Alan McDonald. Where is he? 2008, Carol Kent. 2009, Marie Johnson. 2010 was the Ryan family, and here tonight is Kevin Ryan. And last year we had two winners at the same, and first is Charlie Bright. And I forget the other, what was his name? Oh, Carl Corona. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce at the time Jason Lewis, State Rep.
And in 1984, John P. Sullivan, our moderator. John, on behalf of myself
myself and Representative Saltmarsh, it's a great honor to present a citation from the great General Court to Helen. I can't think of anybody more deserving of the honor of being named Winchester's Citizen of the Year. Congratulations, Helen. Citation reads, "Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Helen Babcock in recognition of being named Winchester's Citizen of the Year by the Winchester Chamber of Commerce. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors." Helen, congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you, Jason. Next, ladies and gentlemen, the 1992 recipient and former selectman, Judy Muja.
Oh God, I love these things. I love all the recipients. Well, Helen, we have a long history, and for me, in a way, it started with the jumelage. Some of you know we have a city with the jumelage, French twinning. And when this happened, it's a long story, I won't tell it, but anyway, the mayor of Saint-Germain-en-Laye said, okay, we will do Winchester. And I need a delegation. When do you need the delegation? He said, well, 2 weeks before Christmas. I said, oh, for God's sake, I didn't say that to him. But I talked to a local travel agent. We had travel agents then. Remember Colonial Travel? I said, listen, what kind of deals do you have on a round trip to Paris for December 9th? And he said, well, if you can book everybody in 3 days, I can get you $300 round trip. I said, okay, done deal, I'll do it. So everywhere I went for the next 2 days, I spoke to everybody I knew and said, how would you like a free week in Paris? All you have to do is pay $300 for the round trip. Helen was one. I think Chris Montgomery said, I'm there, and I'm going to call Helen Babcock. And Helen said, I'm there too. I ended up with 17 people. You know, everybody I met at Stop and Shop and wherever I went, it was purity supreme then. So 17 of us went off to Paris. Well, you've heard about Rotary and her presidency. We arrived, and I told the mayor ahead of time, oh, we have 3 members of Rotary International. Oh, c'est bon, madame, c'est parfait. Bon. We arrived in Paris, and it came time to introduce them, and one man said to me, mon Dieu, madame, ils sont des femmes, they are women. Well, being French, you know, the frog gulps and is polite, and the 3 women were entertained by Rotary International of Saint-Germain near Paris without a blip, right? Okay. Well, no sooner did that happen than, of course, Helen was one of the first that said, sure, I'll take an intern. So our first group of interns came, and she had a dear gal we're still in contact with. So in view of all that, Helen, the first thing I have to offer you is a lifetime membership in the Jumelage. You're an honorary member. And I'll give you a certificate. Well, that's the serious stuff. Then, you know, Helen is at the point that many of us are at, where you consider your own life more than other people's lives. Not completely, but it's time to really take care of yourself. And Helen started doing this with her delicious place in Mystic, Connecticut. You know about that, right? And when the last French group came, off we went to Mystic, and Helen made wonderful things happen there. Well, Mystic is a seafaring town, and some of you here must have boats or canoes or something, right? And you know that if you're a seafaring sort of person, there's that expression, no matter how tough the day is, the time comes when the sun is over the yardarm. Remember that? And that's generally considered to be along about 5 o'clock. Well, some days 5 o'clock looks to be so far in the future. You really don't want to wait that long. So for you, Helen, for your lovely place in Mystic, knowing the need at a just hang this anywhere, but what it says is, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. The chamber couldn't have picked a better recipient, and it's great fun to be part of a picking group. Congratulations.
Helen, this is not the voice, so don't bank on it. But we all wrote a little song in your honor, and we would like to sing it for you now.
Sustainable Winchester, multicultural network, think she still supports today. She always ships and gives, does how she lives, and she still shares the COA. Our citizen of the year, why does she volunteer? And we thank her through and through. For her trips through the town, her service goes rolled out to many ways or others to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, although many people in Winchester know that Helen is the head of the Council on Aging here in Winchester, and our next speaker is Paul Collins. He's a long-time member of the town meeting from Precinct 2. He was chairman of the Finance Committee. He was a member of the council, is a member of the Council on Aging, and he's recently been the chairman of the Master Planning Committee for the Right Lock Farm. It's my pleasure to introduce Paul Collins.
I did. Should I call him Mr. Moderator? Mercifully, I'm not going to come tonight. Might be the only applause line I get. I'm glad to be here on behalf of the Council on Aging. And Helen, truth be told, I did not come up with all these remarks myself. We've had a group on the council who met at breakfast to help me. So if any of the remarks you particularly like, I'll take credit for those. And for those that you don't like, I know who came up with it. When Helen took over as chair in the Council on Aging, she had some big shoes to fill. Marsha Wood had served as chair, and Marsha is here tonight, for well over 10 years. And Marsha had become an expert at all things pertaining to elder services. Helen was relatively new to the COA and was relatively new to elder services when she took over. But she took the reins in her typical fashion and took the council in new directions, which, listening to the other speakers here tonight, is not surprising to me or anyone else. She used her connections in town government, in state government, business, social organizations to broaden our scope and to broaden our discussions during our meetings. And she did it with the charm, the grace, and the dignity that you come to expect when you know Helen. But I'm not here to tell you that she's the perfect chair of the COA. The Jenks Center, which half of them distinguished themselves tonight with that wonderful singing performance, is a public-private partnership between the Council on Aging, the Quiet Group, and the Winchester Seniors Association. And they publish a monthly newsletter detailing all things helpful to our seniors. It is by far the most important communication tool that both organizations use to reach the 20% of the Winchester population that's of senior age. I'm not quite there myself yet. However, often during our discussions in the COA, Helen would sometimes say, you know, we should put that in the newsletter. The answer always comes back from one of us. Helen, it is in the newsletter. She never reads our own propaganda. In spite of that, she's here tonight, to be honest. You know, when you serve with volunteers, they often come with agendas and preconceived notions about what should be done. But with Helen, it's all about the relationships. And I think that's a common thread that came through all these speakers here tonight. Whatever the task, she's the first to say, you know, I know someone who may be able to help us with that. And the next thing you know, that poor person has been recruited, and someone that he or she knows has been recruited as well. And we have a group working on a task. She has an amazingly unique way to knit together seemingly unconnected groups in town and to bring them together to solve problems. And that's because she thinks outside the box, and she has filled her own personal sandbox with a wealth of personal relationships. It's always fun, actually, to watch her work these connections, unless, of course, you don't want to get involved. If a task needs to be done, charming Helen can become a bulldog. A benevolent, charming bulldog, but a bulldog nonetheless. Her family may disagree with that, I'm sure. We'll get their word on it later. The word in the street is that Helen has endowed chairs at Nelson's Bakery and Dunkin' Donuts so that she can catch and cajole her victims even before they have their morning coffee. I didn't have the pleasure to know Helen as she grew up in Charlestown, a daughter in an Irish family in a very Irish place in Boston. But I bet that she possessed the same strong personality that we know of Helen today. I suspect that she was always ahead of her time, as she has been during her tenure here in Winchester. Long before Title IX opened up athletic doors for my daughter and thousands of other daughters, Helen was an avid and serious basketball player. I don't know if many people know that. And she continued playing into adulthood. And I think she met Tom playing basketball at Ginn Field, where his group of guys did not have a permit for the basketball court, and Helen's group of women did. Somehow the compromise became Helen and Tom's. I think that's a good way to have a basketball game. And to this day, she remains a die-hard fan of her beloved Boston Celtics. And I was thinking today, if this event, I thought about it last night watching the Celtics beat the 76ers. If this event was scheduled for tomorrow, it'd be fun to see Helen squirm as she tries to figure out how to get out of this event early enough to catch the second game of Game 6 in Philadelphia. And speaking of the Celtics in Charlestown, I can say as a product of the Collins and Fitzpatrick clan that Helen is very much an Irishman in the best sense of the word. Unlike those of us who typify the saying, an Irishman is miserable until he is, Helen embodies the best of our traits. She's open, gregarious, and has a desire to do good, social good. And that desire has now become legendary and justifiably so. Her community efforts remind me of JFK's famous line, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Helen has taken that advice to heart locally, and Winchester is a better place for it. So Helen, on behalf of your friends and colleagues at the Quiet Council on Aging, and everyone in this room, including the louder Winchester Senior Society, enjoy this honor tonight. Congratulations. But most importantly, thank you for everything you've done. Good evening, and thank you very much.
And of course, we have we're very honored to have our new town manager here, Richard Howard. So one of the things, when you're no longer on the Board of Selectmen and you don't have that level of remuneration and the foreign travel budget at your access, you have to come up with hobbies or other things to do. So Jennifer's been helping me with this transition, and we have something called the Winchester Antique Roadshow, and we'll be doing this more and more often, but tonight we just want to we'll kick it off, and I'll get this to you.
Thank you.
I have something. Jennifer is a
Jennifer is
I'm going to start talking. So, welcome to Antiques Roadshow. We travel through various communities and let people bring residents and other items of value from their community. And tonight, we're visiting the community of Winchester. There's no telling what you might learn about things you've been living with all your life. So let's begin. And Roger, I think you were going to bring something of value this evening. you've brought us. Tell me, what do you know about it, and how did it come to be in Winchester?
It's too late for that. Well, Winchester's been living with this piece for some time. People admire it, and it gets a lot of compliments wherever it goes. I know it's valuable. I'm just eager to find out what it's worth.
Well, it's not often we get to see something this wonderful. This piece has clearly been well loved and cared for. It has a lovely exterior. It appears to have all its original parts. Now, you say this piece is from Winchester. If you look closely at the surface, you can see that there is a veneer. It's a good one, but it doesn't go all the way through. On closer examination, you can see that under the surface there are signs this piece has spent some time in South Boston, or could it be Charlestown?
Charlestown, really? Will that diminish its value to suburban collectors?
Not necessarily, because sometimes value is established through a piece's life experience and exposure to interesting people and places. Could this item have any connection with Whitey Bulger and the Winter Hill Gang? You know, Roger, if you can prove that, this piece would actually increase in value. Mob-related memorabilia is very hot right now. Now, you said this is from Winchester, right? It's interesting, I see that actually checks out, as I see that this piece may have been exposed to some flooding.
Yes, but I've been very careful to keep this piece away from rising waters, although from time to time we've allowed it to visit Mystic, Connecticut. Will that be a problem with its valuation?
Oh, no. It does look more like ocean exposure. Not a big deal, because some collectors prefer a lightly weathered look. Where else has this piece been?
Well, this piece has spent time in the Winchester real estate business, and I heard tonight it was incredibly successful. Again, collectors like items with successful histories. In fact, what?
You heard this piece was successful in the real estate business? Collectors do like items with successful histories. In fact, good history is so important, and she has so much, she may even qualify for a historic preservation easement. And you know, that is even better than a demolition delay bylaw. Is there anything else I should know about?
Actually, it speaks, regularly sharing bits of wisdom and wit.
For example?
No matter what you do, you have to be true to yourself.
And we can certainly see that from what we see sitting here tonight. Anything else?
And this little pearl of wisdom, Winchester is just like Chelsea, but with trees.
The real estate business.
You can't write that stuff.
That could be so right or so wrong on just so many levels.
Well, what do you think she's worth? Is it worth keeping in Winchester?
Well, I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that while this piece is very unique and in excellent condition and definitely worth keeping in Winchester, this piece is not truly an antique. Although she seems like a fixture in town who's been here forever, she is far too young to be considered an antique.
Darn.
Don't worry, there's also some good news. I've rarely seen such a valuable piece in any community that I've visited. My opinion is whatever you do, don't let this one go. This piece is priceless. You and the town of Winchester are lucky to have it. So love it, protect it, cherish it. If it were me, I would keep it out of the sun. And I thank you for bringing it in.
Thank you very much, and Jennifer, thank you. A new star is born. You're out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is the last speaker, and he has had a very fortunate life by being the son of Helen. And I know he's coming up here. This is Stephen. He's coming up here, and I know he speaks not only for himself, but all members of the family. Steve?
Oh goodness, I have to follow that. My name's Steve Poftak. I'm Helen's son. My sister Amy would be up here, but she used the very little used, I'm 38 weeks pregnant and I'm not going up on the dais excuse. And I think I have to give that to her. I think you've earned that, Amy. And I know you would be up here otherwise. So, I would like to say thank you to the Chamber on behalf of the Babcock family. We very much appreciate this honor. And I just want to talk a little bit, tell a handful of stories about my mother's commitment, her passion, and her loyalty. In terms of commitment to the community, we've talked a lot about all the different things she's done, involvement in the Jenks, the town manager search, Jumelage, Rotary, all these things. I'm going to reach way back. For those of you who may not have been around, we talked earlier about my mother's love of basketball. Celtic season ticket holder, played it as a youth, was very involved in girls basketball in Winchester in the mid-'80s, particularly when my sister was playing. My sister, the most reluctant co-captain of the Winchester High School basketball team ever. And my mother helped organize girls basketball in Winchester. And one of my particular memories from that is one of her little-known talents you may not be aware of is her ability to create slideshows and sync it up to music. We watched, Helen put together, and we watched the slideshow that was shown at the 1985 Winchester Girls Basketball Association breakup dinner. We must have watched that 50 times, and it featured wonderful slides of all the kids at the time playing basketball, set to Van Halen's Jump, which for 1985 Winchester was a very hip, very edgy choice of music. So, that really, to me, was one of those moments where it really showed her commitment to the community. The other thing we've talked about a little bit tonight was her passion. And for those of you, there's a handful of you here who may not be familiar with how the Winchester real estate world works. If you've ever seen the HBO series, it's roughly similar to that, except there's more hair care product, fouler language, and slightly less violence. If you'll forgive me one more reference. Before there was Facebook and Twitter and the social networking was a term of art, the real social network in Winchester was always the back rooms at the real estate offices. And I can't tell you what a burden it was growing up in Winchester, having a parent who worked in a real estate office where all the brokers would sit around and trade information about what their kids did that weekend. So I see a couple folks here, a couple faces I remember. If your kids came to the party at my house in 1988, your kids are still in trouble because I'm still in trouble. The last thing I want to say about her passion for her work was Amy and I always knew one of my mother's favorite parts of the job was poaching brokers from other offices. And we always knew when the game was afoot because we'd start to see receipts from out-of-town town Dunkin' Donuts and obscure coffee shops showing up in the house. As soon as you saw that Arlington Dunkin' Donuts receipt, you knew she was chasing someone and they were meeting somewhere where they didn't think they'd be seen. And that was the part that I think she loved the most. So, you know, I salute the passion for her work. The last piece I want to talk about is loyalty to her family. She's been fiercely loyal to her family. And Amy and I have had this experience, and we've had it multiple times, where, you know, in the course of our daily lives, we're walking around downtown Boston, we see someone, we bump into an old classmate, and, you know, I might mention it to my mom, oh, I bumped into so-and-so, and all of a sudden her face seizes up, and she looks at me and she says, you know, he was very mean to your sister in elementary school. I say, well, you know, Mom, that was 30 some odd years ago. I've kind of forgotten, they've kind of forgotten. She says, but he was very mean. So to the extent that any of you have business to do with Helen, or your children have business to do, you have to make sure the slate is clean all the way back to Ambrose Elementary School, or there's trouble. My mother is one of a kind, unique in her expression of commitment, passion, and loyalty, but luckily for Winchester, there are many others who bring, in different ways, that kind of commitment, passion, and loyalty, and that's what makes this such a special community to grow up in. So again, on behalf of my family, I thank you for this, and appreciate it.
Was absolutely wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, oh, thank you very much. We put him in my car. I thought it was your corsage. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to introduce another lady who does a ton of work for the town. Judy Manzo, who is the president of the Winchester Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, everybody. This is Happy New Year to me. I love this event. This is just the beginning of a new season and celebrating a great last year. And no better person than Helen Babcock. When I took over Bookends in 1992, that's 20 years ago this summer, Helen was one of the few major mentors I had downtown. She, Anna Frateroli, Debbie Taylor Smith, the four of us, well, she started the Downtown Business Association, and I joined in. And it was just so great to have such wisdom and experience. Oops. Been in business before, and we've maintained that. And I have one little side story. As Helen's career grew, and she then ultimately did leave the downtown business community, she gave me a great compliment. And that compliment was, she had become very good friends with my friend Beverly, who is my store manager and has been for 19 years out of the 20. And she said to Beverly, she was moving into big time real estate, big management, and would you be interested maybe in coming and working with her? And so I considered that a great compliment. Number one, Beverly's fabulous, and she ultimately chose to stick with me, and I'm glad. But I figured since Helen wanted her, she was really good, so extra specially good to her ever since. So Beverly thanks because I'm doing a much better job being her boss. Let me then take one more minute to make a commercial. This, Helen, I'm sorry, darling, is not for you. This is our commercial that the Winchester Chamber of Commerce for many years now has sponsored the flower hanging basket downtown. We have become one of the most beautiful flower and tree cities in the New England area, but it doesn't come cheap. The Chamber of Commerce is not a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no money except our dues, which pay to run our office and get things done. So we do a major fundraiser. and that is for the Flower Basket Program. This will be hung, well, actually, Bill Cassie's taking this one, right? And these baskets, by the way, are created with loving, loving hands by Mr. Paul Mahoney and staff. It has been a long time, wonderful partnership. He gives us the best of the best for a very, very fair price. And then our town of Winchester, the DPW, does the best of the best to keep these things alive and gorgeous all summer, but it does cost money. So if you have a few cents left over, just contact the Winchester Chamber of Commerce, and even, you know, $25, $20, $10, anything to help, because it does cost. And the more we get, the longer we can keep them up. That's the end of the commercial. One other commercial, and then I'm going to finish up for you. Flowers, flowers everywhere. Brian Malaskis has his third annual Art and Bloom at the Next Door Theater on Friday, June 1st, from 7 to 10. If you've ever been to Boston, to the Museum of Fine Arts and Art and Bloom, well, you don't need to do that. Free parking right outside on Cross Street. Come on in for an amazing event with local artists and local flower designers, and you will have a delightful evening. That's June 1st. And finally, the last ad, and I don't get paid for any of this, by the way. The last ad is our annual garden tour. All the Winchester Garden Clubs come together with the Chamber of Commerce to spend a beautiful afternoon in sunny, we hope sunny, Winchester. This is on Thursday, June 7th, from 12 to 4, and usually there's 6, 7 gardens. We have a lunch and tour some beautiful homes and flowers and get inspired. The ads are done. Having said all that, we want to thank everyone for coming and making this our 33rd annual Citizen of the Year Award. Again, so memorable. We want to leave Helen with a token of our appreciation to remember tonight. And of course, Kathy Alexander, our wonderful executive director, always shops local. So one of our wonderful jewelers in town, Artie Sims, has provided, with the help from the Chamber, has provided this wonderful gift for our dear Helen. Helen, do you want to say a few words and good night? Come on up. Helen's going to give us all a due.
My 10-page speech already here for you. I know you're dying to hear it. When I thought about what I wanted to say tonight, there was one sentence that kept coming, and it was, how lucky am I? How lucky am I to be with you on this very special occasion, and to be able to share this with my family, my incredible family, Stephen, Kathleen, Amy, Ernie, as well as my partner in life, Tom, and his son Stephen. Tom's son Christopher can't be here. He's in Florida with his wife and 3 kids, and I wish they could be here. My 2 sisters, Mary and Jean. If you want fierce, there they are. There they are. They're just terrific and so supportive. And my nephews, Tom and Kevin and Aaron and Jen, thank you. How lucky am I to be able to start a business, to work with the best agents, many of you are out there, the best agents in real estate, and to have fun doing it. How lucky am I to chair the Council on Aging, a truly phenomenal, phenomenal group of people. I thank you. And also to be on the Jenks Learning Connection with the Louder group, the Jenks Learning Connection. How lucky am I to meet a new group of volunteers by serving on the Town Manager's Search Advisory Committee, a small but mighty group. We had a great summer last summer. It just was an extraordinary group. How lucky am I to live in a town filled with all of you, to live here, to raise my children here, to start my business here, and to be eternally grateful for the privilege. I want to thank the Chamber. I want to especially thank the Chamber for changing the date, because Tom and I were babysitting in Florida last week, and I wouldn't have made this if it was last week. And I want to thank my 2 wing women. Everyone needs a wingman. I have 2 wing women. One, Nan Shanahan, I want to thank you. And I want to thank someone who can't be here this evening, Mary Ann O'Callahan, who just has been aided and embedded by my sister Mary. So thank you. I want to thank all the past citizens of the year for all the volunteer work that you give to the town and make it so very special. And I cannot forget the Friday morning breakfast group that meets at 7 a.m. I'm not always there anymore because I'm retired, but they take me back in when I show up, and I want to thank them. You are my people, my tribe, my friends, and I love you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and Helen, we all love you. Have a good evening.